Chicago, November 1992. A bitter wind howls through the streets of South Side, pushing yellowed leaves and crumpled paper cups along cracked sidewalks. The flickering light of a dying street lamp casts long shadows near a nearly deserted bus stop. Marcus, once a respected high school teacher, now homeless, sits hunched on a cold metal bench. His worn army jacket, faded at the elbows and frayed at the cuffs, does little to keep out the chill. His fingers, rough and calloused, grip a tattered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, a parting gift from his students, the last physical reminder of the life he once had. Deep in his pocket rests a folded photograph, its edges softened from too much handling. The image shows a young girl with wide, hopeful eyes, his daughter, taken into foster care after the funeral. Beside it, a crumpled $5 bill, all the money he has left in the world. Footsteps echo on the pavement. A woman in a tailored business suit approaches, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. No coat, no gloves, just thin fabric between her and the freezing air. Her heels click against the concrete, but her steps falter, unsteady. The wind bites harder, and she shivers violently, her breath coming in short, visible puffs. Marcus watches her, the way her fingers clutch at her sleeves, the way her shoulders hunch against the cold. He sees the faint tremor in her hands, the tightness in her jaw. Without hesitation, he shrugs off his jacket and holds it out. She stares at him, startled, shakes her head, but he doesn't withdraw. There's no grand gesture, no speech, just a silent offering of warmth. After a moment, she takes it, slipping her arms into sleeves still shaped by his frame. The bus arrives with a groan of brakes, its doors hissing open. She steps inside, glancing back once. Then the doors close, and she's gone. Marcus sits back down. The cold seeps into his bones now, sharper without the jacket. But there's something else, too, a quiet, unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. For the first time in months, he doesn't feel invisible. The wind howls. The street lamp flickers again. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wails. He pulls the book closer to his chest and waits. The night stretches on, but for once, it doesn't feel quite so endless. The elevator doors slide open with a quiet chime, revealing the sterile silence of Cheryl's penthouse apartment. The space is immaculate, polished marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the glittering Chicago skyline, furniture arranged with clinical precision. Yet despite the luxury, the air feels hollow, untouched. She shrugs off the borrowed army jacket, its rough fabric foreign against her designer blouse, and drapes it over the back of a chair. Her fingers brush against something in the inner pocket. She pulls out a creased photograph, its edges softened from years of handling. A young black girl grins up at the camera, her braids tied with colorful beads, her smile wide and gap-toothed. Scrawled in a child's handwriting at the bottom, asterisk, I love you, Daddy. Asterisk, the words punch through Cheryl's carefully constructed composure. She traces the girl's face with her thumb, the paper warm from being kept close to someone's heart. The photograph triggers a flood of unwelcome memories. Suddenly, she's 8 years old again, standing in the doorway of a roach-infested apartment on the west side, watching paramedics zip her mother into a black bag. The smell of burnt heroin and stale beer. The hollow eyes of neighbors who looked away. Then Mr. Jenkins from 3B, stooped with age, his hands gnarled from decades at the steel mill, wordlessly handing her a bowl of chicken soup every night for weeks, saving her from the gnawing hunger when the world forgot she existed. She sets the photo down on the glass coffee table, its vibrancy clashing with the monochrome perfection of her apartment. Dawn filters through the windows, painting the room in pale gold. Without hesitation, she picks up her phone and dials her assistant. Her voice is calm, measured, but her grip on the receiver is white-knuckled. She gives clear instructions. Find a man who owns this jacket. Find Marcus. Across the city, in the skeletal remains of an abandoned auto shop, Marcus stirs on his makeshift bed of flattened cardboard boxes. The garage door is rusted shut, but the winter wind still finds its way through the cracks, whispering across his skin. He sits up, rolling the stiffness from his shoulders, and reaches for his shoes, the soles worn thin, the laces knotted in multiple places where they've snapped and been repaired. He checks his pockets by habit. The $5 is still there, the photograph safely tucked behind it. The book lies beside him, its spine cracked from use. He runs a hand over the cover before slipping it into his bag. Another day of trudging from one temporary agency to another. Another day of polite rejections and averted eyes. But today feels different. There's a strange weight in his chest, the lingering echo of the woman's startled gratitude. The city wakes around him as he steps out into the weak morning light. Somewhere, in a sleek office high above the streets, a search begins. But Marcus doesn't know that yet. He just walks, one foot in front of the other, heading toward another day of invisible survival. The private investigator's report sits on Cheryl's desk, its crisp white pages stark against the dark mahogany surface. Her fingers trace the lines of text detailing Marcus's fall from grace, a beloved high school English teacher who lost his wife to a hit-and-run accident, then his home to medical bills, and finally his daughter to the foster system when he could no longer provide. The documents paint a picture of a man moving through shelters, abandoned buildings, and the occasional charity cot. His teaching license expired, but his mind still sharp. Across town, the Harold Washington Library's reading room hums with quiet activity. Marcus sits at a corner table, his large hands carefully turning the pages of the Chicago Tribune's classified section. A pencil rests behind his ear, its eraser worn down to a nub from circling potential jobs. The familiar scent of old paper and wood polish surrounds him, the only luxury he still allows himself. His posture remains straight, shoulders squared, the last vestiges of classroom dignity he clings to. Cheryl enters the library with purposeful steps, her designer heels clicking softly on the marble floor. She spots him immediately, the way his eyes move hungrily across the newsprint, the careful way he folds the paper to preserve it for the next reader. When she approaches, his body tenses before he even looks up, years of street life having honed his awareness. Their eyes meet, and she sees the wariness there, the automatic expectation of another rejection or hollow promise. Without speaking, she slides a brochure across the table. The glossy paper shows smiling teenagers in a bright community center, the words Jenkins Youth Foundation embossed in gold. Marcus's fingers twitch, but he doesn't reach for it. Cheryl turns to leave, then pauses just long enough to place her business card on top of the brochure before walking away. An hour later, a black town car idles at the library's curb. Marcus emerges, hesitating at the top of the steps. His clothes are clean but threadbare, his shoes polished as best as they can be. He takes a deep breath and steps forward. The youth center pulses with life when they arrive. The walls vibrate with laughter and heated debate, the scent of microwave popcorn and cheap perfume hanging in the air. In one room, a group of teenagers huddle around a volunteer reading poetry. In another, two boys fiercely debate basketball stats while shooting crumpled paper into a trash can. Marcus stands frozen in the doorway, his eyes darting from face to face, seeing echoes of his former students in every expression. A girl of about 14 catches his attention. She sits apart from the others, a tattered copy of The Bluest Eye in her hands, her fingers tracing the words as she reads. The way she bites her lip in concentration, the slight furrow between her brows, it's a look Marcus knows well. It's the look of a kid discovering that books can be lifelines. Something shifts behind his eyes. His shoulders relax, just slightly. His breathing deepens. For the first time in years, he doesn't feel like a ghost. The weight in his chest lightens, replaced by something faint but persistent, the first embers of purpose stirring back to life. The morning sun filters through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Cheryl's corner office, casting geometric patterns across the polished conference table. Marcus sits stiffly in the leather chair, his large hands folded tightly on the table surface. The contract before him glows in the sunlight, the words Mentor in Residence printed in bold letters at the top. His eyes trace the terms: a modest salary, health benefits, access to the foundation's legal resources. The pen beside the document remains untouched. Across the table, Cheryl watches the conflict play out across his face. She sees the way his jaw tightens when he reads the salary figure, the slight tremor in his fingers as they hover over the page. His resistance is palpable, a living thing between them. She slides another paper forward, a court document from the Department of Child Services, stamped with next week's hearing date. Marcus's breath catches audibly. The youth center hums, with its usual afternoon chaos, when Marcus arrives for his first day. A group of teenagers clustered near the vending machines fall silent as he passes, their eyes tracking him with open suspicion. In the rec room, a lanky boy with cornrows deliberately knocks over a chair as Marcus approaches. The challenge hangs unspoken in the air. Marcus simply rights the chair and takes a seat, pulling a worn copy of the autobiography of Malcolm X from his bag. He begins reading aloud, his voice steady and rich, ignoring the skeptical glances. Weeks pass in a rhythm of small breakthroughs and setbacks. Jamal, the boy who knocked over the chair, starts lingering near the bookshelf after sessions. One rainy Thursday, he slides into the seat beside Marcus and asks, barely audible, how someone gets published. Marcus hides his smile behind the book he's holding and begins explaining about submissions and literary journals. In the art room, 15-year-old Tanisha works in stubborn silence, her paintbrush slashing angry red streaks across the canvas. She hasn't spoken since witnessing her brother's shooting 3 months prior. Marcus doesn't push, simply sits nearby grading papers, occasionally commenting on the Chicago weather or a song playing on the radio. One afternoon, she shoves a painting at him without warning, a haunting cityscape with a single lit window in the distance. He accepts it gravely, hanging it on his office wall the next day where she can see it. Meanwhile, Cheryl's lawyers navigate the labyrinth of family court. Paperwork is filed, home inspection scheduled. Marcus spends his evenings scrubbing the small 2-bedroom apartment Cheryl helped him secure, checking and rechecking that the refrigerator is stocked, that the second bedroom's twin bed is made with new sheets. The night before the custody hearing, he sits on that bed, staring at the framed school photo of his daughter on the nightstand. His fingers trace the glass, remembering the weight of her small hand in his. When the judge's gavel falls the next afternoon, granting provisional custody, Marcus doesn't cheer or cry. He simply stands straighter, as if an invisible weight has been lifted from his shoulders. That night, for the first time in 18 months, he sleeps in a real bed, in a room with 4 walls and a locked door. The unfamiliar comfort keeps him awake longer than the cold ever did. Through the thin wall, he can hear his daughter's steady breathing in the next room. The sound is more soothing than any lullaby. Back at the center, Jamal shows up with 3 pages of typed poetry tucked in his back pocket. Tanisha leaves a new painting on Marcus's desk every Monday. The chair in the reading circle is no longer empty. And every morning, Marcus puts on his one good button-down shirt, checks his tie in the mirror, and steps out into a world that suddenly feels full of possibilities. A crisp autumn breeze carries the scent of fallen leaves through the streets of Chicago as the Jenkins Youth Foundation celebrates its first anniversary. The building that once housed only a handful of skeptical teenagers now bursts at the seams with activity, its walls vibrating with the energy of dozens of young voices. Newspaper clippings and award certificates adorn the reception area, each one featuring Marcus's name alongside phrases like community hero and education innovator. His face has become familiar across the city, not as the homeless man who once haunted library reading rooms, but as the passionate advocate smiling from magazine covers and local news segments. In Marcus's small office, stacks of advanced copies of his memoir crowd every available surface. The book's cover shows a simple black and white photograph of a classroom chalkboard, the title Chalk Dust and Second Chances, printed in unassuming type. His daughter carefully arranges a display of them on the signing table for tonight's launch event, her fingers lingering on the dedication page, where her name appears. She wears the yellow dress Marcus bought for this occasion, the one she picked out herself after 3 Saturdays of careful shopping. The bookstore hosting the event quickly overflows with attendees. Former students, now young adults, line up alongside social workers and educators. Some faces Marcus recognizes immediately. The boy who couldn't read at 16, now holding a community college acceptance letter. The girl who never spoke in class, now studying theater arts. Others surprise him. The grocery store cashier, who always slipped him an extra roll. The librarian who pretended not to notice when he stayed past closing. His daughter stands at his side throughout the evening, handing him pens and straightening his tie during lulls, her quiet pride radiating like warmth. As the seasons change, so too does the rhythm of Marcus and Cheryl's lives. Their shared calendar fills with foundation meetings and school events, but increasingly, blank spaces appear marked simply as dinner or walk. These moments become sacred. They develop a habit of Sunday afternoons by Lake Michigan, where the water stretches endlessly and the city noise fades to a hum. Cheryl learns the art of packing picnics that can survive 2 hours of conversation before being eaten. Marcus discovers the pleasure of watching sunlight catch the gold flecks in her eyes as she laughs. One such evening, as the sun dips below the horizon painting the sky in shades of burnt orange and deep purple, Marcus reaches into his coat pocket. The photograph he produces is worn at the edges, its surface slightly glossy from years of handling. Cheryl recognizes it immediately, the little girl's smiling face that once fell from the pocket of an army jacket. Only now on the back, in Marcus's careful script, are the words asterisk, "Thank you for the second chance." Asterisk. The simple gift hangs in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Cheryl turns it over in her hands several times before tucking it safely into her wallet, where it will remain from that day forward, always close at hand. The lake breeze stirs the pages of Marcus's ever-present notebook, where new chapter ideas bloom. His daughter's laughter carries from further down the shore, where she plays with friends. And for the first time and longer than either can remember, the future stretches before them not as something to endure, but as a story they might shape together. The city lights begin to flicker on across the water, tiny beacons against the gathering dark. They sit in comfortable silence, watching as night gently claims the day, neither feeling the need to speak nor to leave. The moment stretches, perfect in its simplicity, a quiet revolution of the heart. Spring arrives in Chicago like a promise kept, washing the south side in tender green shoots and the faint perfume of flowering trees. The newly renovated community center buzzes with anticipation, its freshly painted walls adorned with murals created by neighborhood youth. Balloons and vibrant colors dance at the entrance, tethered to ribbons that flutter in the warm breeze. The entire block has turned out for the grand opening. Elderly women in their Sunday hats, young parents with babies on their hips, teenagers trying to look disinterested but lingering near the front. Inside, the air hums with excited chatter and the occasional burst of laughter. Round tables display brochures for new programs, job training, addiction recovery services, family reunification assistance. The scent of barbecue from the outdoor grills mingles with the crisp smell of new books in the learning center. At the heart of the main room, encased in a simple glass frame, hangs Marcus's old army jacket, its frayed sleeves and faded patches displayed like a work of art. A small plaque beneath it reads, "Every act of kindness begins a revolution." The ceremony begins with Cheryl stepping onto the small stage, her usually impeccable professional composure softened by the emotion of the moment. She speaks about second chances and community, about how helping one person creates ripples that touch countless others. Then she invites Marcus to join her, and the room erupts in applause that shakes the windows. He approaches with his daughter, the girl now nearly as tall as his shoulder, her hand tucked securely in his. When he reaches the microphone, he simply stands for a long moment, looking out at the sea of faces, former students, neighbors, people who once walked past him on the street without seeing him. The silence stretches, thick with understanding, before he finally nods and steps back, his eyes shining. As the ribbon is cut and the crowd begins exploring the new facilities, Cheryl takes Marcus aside. She presses a small velvet box into his palm. Inside rests a single brass key, its teeth still sharp and new. He turns it over in his fingers, the metal catching the afternoon light, and understands without explanation. The house waits for them just 3 blocks away, a modest brick bungalow with a wide porch and a maple tree in the yard that will turn brilliant red come autumn. That evening, as fireflies begin their luminous dance in the gathering twilight, Marcus and Cheryl sit on their porch steps. The teacups in their hands steam gently, the fragrance of chamomile mingling with the scent of freshly cut grass. Through the open windows drift the sounds of Marcus's daughter practicing piano inside, her hesitant notes slowly, finding their rhythm. Somewhere beyond their peaceful street, the city continues its endless cycle of struggle and survival. But here, in this moment, there's only the comfortable silence between two people who have learned the language of each other's quiet. Inside the new community center, illuminated by a soft spotlight, the framed jacket hangs as a silent testament. Its empty sleeves no longer offer warmth, but its presence speaks volumes. On particularly difficult days, staff will notice troubled teens pausing before it, their fingers hovering near the glass as if absorbing some invisible strength. And in the jacket's left pocket, barely visible unless one looks closely, remains the faint outline of a photograph that started it all, a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures bridge the greatest distances between human hearts. The night deepens around the little house with the maple tree. One by one, the lights blink out, first in the daughter's room, then the living room, until only the porch light remains, casting its golden glow on the sidewalk like a beacon. Somewhere out in the Chicago night, another shivering figure stands at a bus stop. Another lost soul searches for shelter. But tomorrow, when the community center doors open at dawn, there will be hot coffee and clean socks and, most importantly, people who remember what it means to be unseen. The cycle continues, but the terms have changed. Hope, once so fragile, has taken root and begun to grow.